This is An Infinite Path, spoken word essays by Niles Heckman, some of which go on to become our documentary short subject films, half of which release freely here through the podcast, all of which can be found through your support at nilesheckman.com. There's a lot of bad spirituality out there. Discerning between what is good versus what is bad can be tough at first. People make tall claims, as there are many, many tricksters and charlatans afoot. Before we move forward and give a simple barometer that lets you know what is fake versus what is real, let's define what spirituality really is. Ask 9 out of 10 people on the street in the West, and they might associate it with religion, giving claims of religious affiliation, saying traditionally that spirituality refers to a religious process of reformation which aims to recover the original shape of man, oriented at the image of God, as exemplified by the founders and sacred texts of the religions of the world. The term was used within early Christianity to refer to a life oriented towards the Holy Spirit, and broadened during the late medieval times to include additional aspects of life. A more modern initial description could be broadened to refer to a wide range of experience, including a range of esoteric traditions and religious traditions. Modern usages tend to refer to a subjective experience of a sacred dimension and the deepest values and meanings by which people live, often in a context separate from organized religious institutions, such as the belief in a supernatural, beyond the known and observable realm, personal growth, a quest for an ultimate or sacred meaning, a religious experience, or an encounter with one's own inner dimension. So you could include the formal structures and teachings of the world's religions as having a tie to one of those definitions, but certainly not all of them. Most modern-day religions are so neutered and watered down, co-opted by empire with blood spillings, judgments, guilt, dogmas, and katmas, and or deplorable behavior by their followers, they are actually today almost void of spirituality. All religion stems from astrotheology, a tie to man's relation to the cosmos and the as-above, so-below relationship to that, and shamanism, which is about tripping balls using a sacrament to union with the divine, an experience of initiation and expansion that gives you direct connection to the Gaian Mother, or smears you across all space and time, or gives you downloads from fungal intelligence, or backdoor mesh network gnosis from the underside of the circuit board of reality, and thus allows one to more realize their spiritual heritage and capabilities. That has been reduced into eat this wafer that was from the body of this corporeal man in a large and cold building. The inside esoteric has been replaced with the external exoteric. Religion's esoteric core truths have been dimmed and a hollow shell remains. But at their inner core, that light does still dimly shine. Not as bright as it once did, but there still is some good stuff there. So religion is both not to be blanketly disrespected, while at the same time, if it's real, it can take the pressure. Same with any claims of spirituality as secular from religion. The Webster's 1828 definition of spiritual is consisting of spirit, not material, incorporeal, as a spiritual substance or being. The soul of man is spiritual. It's what you are capable of in your most expansive state. Spirituality is not chasing rainbows. As the amazing Mexican Carlo Alvite, who I spoke to on the podcast in 2019, said, it's your life. And I would extend that into saying it's your real life, and how you conduct yourself through your mind, your heart, and your will. The further you go in that process, the more balance and inner work you put in, the more you will have experience and realization that spirit and soul are aspects of you, or what you might call your higher self. To connect more with higher self, you must reduce ego, because ego blocks wisdom. When ego is in balance, your energetic centers are balanced, and your deeds and conduct are honorable, your spirit is a beneficial connection to the larger spiritual realms, and that everyone and everything is embodied with it. A spiritual developed human will become a big individual which does not so much need big corporations or big governments. Thus, the larger you become, the more powerful you become, for we are spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way around. So spirituality is the real. Switch out those words. They are synonymous. Now, let's look at the opposite definition to spiritual, which is material. The Webster's 1828 definition is consisting of matter, not spiritual, a material substance, material bodies. Nature is both spiritual and material, so we of course exist in both places. Material has aspects of excellence, but solely seeing things from only a material standpoint is materialism. Commercialism is the promotion of material things not made by the divine, but by man. What conscious man makes is excellent. Let's say a woman making her own beautiful jewelry from her own artistic talents. Yet what less conscious man makes is horrible, such as a mountaintop removal coal mining company in West Virginia which blows the entire top off mountains, leaving a desolate sludge of chemical mudslide disgust. There's a grand canyon of difference between those two types of materialism. One is balanced and the other is massively imbalanced, as the most commercial things will likely have the most overloaded material things. The Webster's 1828 definition of commercial is the principles, practices, and spirit of commerce. The spirit of commerce, compared to the spirit of the individual, that is. Most exemplified by extreme commercialism, which emphasizes on the maximization of profit within materiality. Materiality is a contraction of what you're capable of through ego misalignment. Because of opposite to spirituality, the commercial world wants to feed your ego by having you climbing up a work ladder and thinking you are defined by your role in commerciality, or catering to what they want you to think your ego needs. Egomaniacs and even sociopaths can do very well in capitalism and the corporate world. Information is the pinnacle of importance in marketing, but in spiritual practice it's just an early step. For reduced humans make dull minds and dim hearts to be marketed to, and commercials don't work or likely are not even seen in the first place by sophisticated, intellectual, developed humans. What is made by natural forces is spiritual, like nature. What is typically but not always made by man, due to our current but somewhat rising cell phone bar signal of consciousness post-2012, is commercial. Everything in the commercial society thinks of you as a barcode. They want you to be a materialist meat suit eater solely here to be advertised to in order to buy and sell things through your wage slavery. Cell phones and web traffic access a worldwide web fraught with algorithms designed to get you to access commercial sources, to click on things and spend time in their places because clicks and follows and traffic equals money for advertising dollars. Our entire consumerist world is filled by the oily glurge of this concept. A rare few who play ball with this system so much and show their willingness to work very hard within it sign away their soul with secret sacrifices where they are then sanctioned to be propped up, rising to join with or even becoming part of the shadowy cabal's highest echelons of what they claim is success and the best achievability by having their names become brands. Like Rothschilds, DuPonts, Vanderbilts, Rockefellers, Astors, Forbeses, Livingstons, Roosevelts, Winthorpes, Ford, Carnegie, Walton, or even Oprah, Chopra, and Robbins, all of which have had marketing empires to sell their products throughout the world. Unless you want to go live in a remote cabin or connect with a remote indigenous tribe, dealing with the brutality of sustaining food and shelter on your own, everyone in the modern world somewhat has to live in the spiderwebs of commerce, meaning the buying and selling of commodities, which is all promoted commercially. In Matrix land, everyone is trying to make money all the time. 90% of our jobs inside the modern world are solely for commercialism. Newspapers and magazines are paper which just existed to sell ad space first, spread propaganda second, with real journalism being third, and their denigration is obvious because of this. Same thing with television and radio, which was more or less only invented to air advertising. It also has things between the advertisements called programs, named that way for a reason, which do their darndest to make sure you don't think and make any possibility for long-term uninterrupted conversations or interactions, how human beings really talk, broken. Again, followed by their inevitable decline. Politics has become a political ad circus where the party who spends the most wins. Most major corporations are ultimately just marketing companies, who also make a product or products as a secondary. Big tech allows you to freely sign up to their platforms and upload your content onto them so they can collect your data and sell it off to the highest bidder. Film festivals don't care about your film. They care about their festival and the submission money they will make off of it. Music industry contracts are 9 out of 10 times written in blood, and will take the souls of the small, authentic band who's trying to create real art so they can water it down into a commercial success. The most commercial music is always what you will most often hear being broadcast to the masses over loudspeakers of movie theaters or shopping malls. It's plastic, catchy, poppy music at best, or K-pop or boy bands at worst, which are ballless, soulless, spiritless, heartless, corporate little bitches, suckers of Satan's cock, as the wonderful comedian Bill Hicks very kindly and accurately used to say. Everything about them is fake and fabricated solely for commercial ends. They are a product, a brand, and ultimately that barcode. While social media is just self-marketing. The system is inauthentic, greedy, and deceptive, and it's the world previous generations have created today, and that inherent inauthenticity is why it will continue its slow decline. Yet most people don't seem to fully realize this, do they? They spend their entire lives just trying to succeed in a commercial world and have nice material possessions and stop there. But you, dear listener, realize there's more, don't you? Good for you. You are probably more interested in states of mind, conduct of character, creating great art, living in as much as harmony with your environment as possible, the expansion of consciousness, connecting with fellow tribe on your similar vibratory level, and the mystery of reality, just to name a few. All of which can be done living much more in symbiosis with nature. A system which is void of meaning can only force conscious beings to want to take less part in it in order to bring back meaning to life. However much you choose to take part in it is your choice. But the ultimate problem with this cultural operating system, which is in desperate need of a software upgrade installation, is that human beings are not solely commercial traders. When one starts to evolve in state of mind and becomes concerned with wanting more out of life, then pursuing it, they are moving away from the commercial and towards the spiritual. Everything truly spiritual will be antithetical to our jobs within material commercial commerce. Empire loves commerce because most of the time you spend in it is a distraction from your spiritual progress. As you progress spiritually, through spiritual growth, you will come to peel old ways of doing things away and see old systems you once may have taken part in for what they really are, and you may no longer want to be as much a part of. You will discover that what is really going on is the opposite of what most of the time you have been previously told, or we could say previously indoctrinated into. So based upon what we've already said here, what would you say is the simple, quick Cliff Notes answer to the sign of real spirituality? Here's a simple cipher code to peer behind the veil. A basic sign of knowing if something is real spiritual philosophy. Spiritual meaning real, and philosophy meaning wisdom. Real wisdom is it will not be commercial. It will have no or extremely little commercialism surrounding it. Nature is the ultimate spiritual teacher. It is not commercial. There has been a few hundred years attempting to commodify the elements, but it won't ultimately last. The majority of the modern technologically advanced world, and I mean not organically technologically advanced like a mycelium network in the undergrowth of a forest, is commercial. Thus, it is ultimately more fake than it is real. So Times Square is a fake place, while a redwood grove is a real place. This is why nature never gets tiring. Charlatans working within the profession of spirituality will be commercial. They use a wrapper of new agey, self-helpy, or even esoteric catchphrases, while still having profit as their primary goal. If you see a spiritual teacher saying things that seem self-empowering and internally transforming, or promoting consciousness expansion on their website, while showing flowers of life, or panpipes, or Vesica Pisces, or CG renders of the globed Earth, or a series of as featured on or as seen on with a bunch of corporate logos, then you might want to watch out. Pay massive amounts of money to come to my sold-out seminar. We're taking millions of dollars to build our new temple. The real temples are inner, by the way, which you envision. They're not built by stone. God wants us to be plentiful, so you should give a percentage of your earnings to the congregation. Buy my New York Times best-selling book. Our quote-unquote mystery school, which is really just a cult, has high monthly dues. Look at my pseudo-spiritual website covered in fallacies about how high my numbers are, download traffic, statistics, etc. All signs of fakery. People tend to shit-can what they're not good at. We must be big individuals, which happens through our spiritual growth, to reduce those big corporations and big corporatized governments. Targeting this power is certainly one of my main priorities, which I'm sure you've noticed. Yet frankly, I've been quite successful personally within my career, air quotes. But I'm doing less of it than I ever have commercially. which means much less money, but the depth of content and substance, like you can see in my documentaries and essays, have to be supported in more decentralized ways from listeners like you. For I know my career, air quotes, is mostly an outer shell, and any success in it is an allowance for me to highlight both the good and the bad within it systematically. Because the best things I've created are the least commercial projects, but they are somehow the last ones I would have to put front and center on the resume. Go figure. I certainly appreciate the beneficial aspects of the professional working class, the disciplines and drive to accomplish goals in teams, entrepreneurship, hard work, etc., and see huge benefits in the output of excellent things that are created through prideful jobs that make our lives easier so we don't have to work the land 16 hours per day and then die at 34 because a brutally hard winter hit. Yet I can still point towards its many flaws when scaled out too large. I've also said numerous times in the past that I'm the least commercial person on Spaceship Earth. This was prior to formulating these more distilled thoughts given in this essay. Perhaps it had been my higher self subconsciously telling my current self, you are trying your best to live a real spiritual life as much as you can, and you may have had similar thoughts. This material commercial versus spiritual dynamic is of course not a binary, as there might be a glimpse of something real seen within something commercial. Conscious business owners or triple bottom line businesses have the right idea, but are operating in a system which goes counter to their intentions. An ad campaign for a specific outdoor clothing supply company shows footage of a human being climbing to a mountaintop saying, hey, unless you want to live as a primitive Iceman in a raw animal hide to do this, you should instead buy our jackets to keep warm. Sure, were the jackets sourced well or were they made using sweatshop slave labor then? The point is, it's more about the ratio of each. If you're sponsoring a business you actually use or you think is adding value to the world, then great. It's the struggle of every artist through time. Making a living, or is it making a dime, off their art by having to interact with commerciality when all you wanted to do is move more towards spirituality. So basically, always remember, the more commercial something is, the more illusory and pretend it is. So it's not a black and white polarized dynamic. The more advanced and wise and deep something is, the more spiritual it is. Yet we can pay folks for their time and efforts, as money is certainly energy. Buy a product I directly created myself. Come to my smaller sized workshop. Sign up for my magic school behind a paywall. Become a premium member. Join my Patreon. How far you want to play it to sustain your own work. It's up to you to decide how commercial you want to be. For the first couple years of this podcast, I certainly resisted putting any sort of commercial introduction to it, and it took everything in my bones to eventually add it. For I must have a product store section of my website in an effort to bypass gatekeepers. It did feel a bit weird and slightly dirty, but I caved. Since people's independent works do take up their time, any compensation like that in today's day and age is totally understandable. So again, it's not a binary. It's not all or nothing. It's a sliding scale. And where you land on that scale is up to you and you alone. We all want to do good work. Real spiritual work is our inner work which helps the great work. It's why we are here. Commercial work is for the dollar, and it's outer work. They will usually be different things, but that doesn't mean we can't find alignment and balance with each. Or even better, if you find something which fuels your true will and helps others spiritually and sustains you financially, then that's great and amazing. A shamaness who takes a small fee for a ceremony, for example. George Gurdjieff owned a carpet company in Moscow. Manly P. Hall had a couple main patrons who were the wife and daughter of an oil baron which financed his works, seeing value in them. John Michael Greer gets royalties from his occult books, and his website is very high-quality blog entries with no marketing, with just a little tip jar on the side. Hal Lucius Nation's Real Esoteric Spiritual Temple, which leads you to your own inner temple, is literally a private newsletter. David Shoemaker's Temple of the Silver Star has a very basic website. Any real mystery school will have no website at all, or a very simple basic website with a simple contact us area. More fake-style AA or OTO or Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn websites will be packed with information. A dear buddy of mine who's galactivated hundreds of people in Santa Cruz, California off 5-MeO DMT, providing them with life-changing betterment, removed his presence completely off the internet and continues to operate with a private encrypted email address only for being contacted at, but with mainly an underground network of connections in the flesh in that area. He's been on a past episode of the Novelty Generators archive, by the way, as a hint hint. Neil Kramer sells audio products, does personal consultations for a fee, and has a single annual workshop which is very modestly priced, both of which allow you to spend direct time with him rather than just being one of many thousands of audience members in a huge hotel conference room or even a full megachurch style stadium. Our film Transmutation does not have a marketing team behind it. It's just word of mouth via its sales. On Josephine McCarthy's first, and certainly not last, episode of my podcast, she mentioned her magic school being not a commercial entity and that they do not care if they don't make any money ever, which was a coded way of her saying it is legit. While her and her school are certainly not perfect, none of us are, she does accept donations on the side, and if you kick her some skrill for that time and effort she put in, that is certainly a nice way to show some appreciation. At the time of this writing, I do use Patreon, which is unperfect tech, but I like that it requires you to create your own content to have your own page worth supporting on it. I also have royalties for my creations, which I made directly, will occasionally consult with others, which they are welcome to financially compensate me for, and send out a very sporadic newsletter, telling folks with eyes to see and ears to hear what's new. Because real spirituality will care about providing you with guidance and tools for path-walking practice first, with any profits as a second, third, fourth, fifth priority. Just as an FYI, when you go to all these websites and they want your email address, it's because all marketers know that the more emails you collect, the more sales you will get off your newsletter. Typically the ratio is about 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 conversions. So if you send out a newsletter email to 1,000 people, you will get between 1 and 10 sales from that email. So you can imagine how many sales you'll get if you have a newsletter of hundreds of thousands or even millions of people. The non-binary component of this spiritual over commercial component dynamic can also be compared to how you structure an email list. It's the difference between being markety gimmicky about it with a, hey, give us your email front and center at the beginning of the site, maybe even with a pop-up field or a claim your free gift field, which are primary and really the only reason that website exists, that versus the content first, then an enter your email address field being secondary and non-intrusive somewhere else on the website page. One way is way more commercial than the other. A shining example of someone who found excellence in this balance is Bill Watterson, a cartoonist and author of the delightful comic strip Calvin and Hobbes, which was syndicated from 1985 to 1995. Watterson stopped drawing Calvin and Hobbes at the end of 95 with a short statement to newspaper editors and his readers that he felt he had achieved all that he could in the medium. He made money off creating the comic strip while he was putting his time into it, and then the rights to the various anthology books, which are wonderful pieces of comic art that will always be there for future generations to enjoy. But he did not commodify it, turning it into a franchise with toys and other merchandise. Today, Watterson is still known for his negative views on licensing and comic syndication, his efforts to expand and elevate the newspaper comic as an art form, and his move back into reclusive private life after he stopped drawing Calvin and Hobbes, which other than from third-party bootleggers who made stickers and decals off the characters, only exist in its original medium. It was about the characters, the art, their stories, and the childhood joy and magic of a youthful imagination which existed within its pages. It was kept pure and never watered down. My daughter likes Peppa Pig, a very cute British preschool animated series, but it's done the opposite, merchandising itself to the nines, with Peppa albums, apps, films, and many plastic crap toys spilling over the shelves, which will ultimately end up in landfills in the near future. The creator who devalues licensing will have more spirit and thus more to say in the work than the one who's all for despiritualizing by making tons more money off licensing. Thus, Calvin and Hobbes will always have much more magic hermetically sealed within it than Peppa Pig.